During the last 24 hours, we have two major developments. The first major development is that Blizzard has acknowledged all the issues I brought up in my first video about the collateral, and they agree that those restrictions should only apply during raid bosses and active Mythic Plus keystones, and they're going to be making those changes in a future build, which basically addresses the core points of my previous video right off the bat, which goes to show that giving articulated, constructive feedback on these issues is being listened to, and that's very encouraging, because that means that as long as we are communicating, then there's a chance to make sure that everything in Midnight is done right going forward. But that's not the only major development. The other major development is that WeakAuras has officially announced that they are discontinuing the add-on for Midnight. And they made a blog post about it, of really saying, why can't they do it? And it basically comes down to the APIs being far too strict and restrictive. It's just not possible for WeakAuras to continue in really any capacity, even outside of raids. The add-on is too gutted by API changes. And that's something I want to talk about today, is more API changes that I've had time to review since the last video that I want to discuss, with what they intend to do and how to fix them so that they still meet those intentions without having needless collateral damage. You know, there's no reason to kill WeakAuras completely. You just have to kill its ability as a combat helper during raid encounters and Mythic Plus. You know, they're trying to reel one thing in, but they're reeling in too much collateral at the same time, and there are ways to go about to fix it. So once again, I made it my handy-dandy bullet point list. First of all, I'm going to go over the current restrictions. We currently have no access to player information in combat at all. Not their spell cooldowns, not their buffs, not even the player's own health. It's all secrets. And I explained the secret API previously, but the problem with secret API is you can't really do anything with it besides display it, and that's very problematic, especially for an add-on like WeakAuras, because displaying it alone doesn't really do anything if you can't understand the context of what you're explaining. And the context WeakAuras gave, for example, is health. You might be able to display the health text, but you cannot articulate, are you high health? Are you low health? What percentage are you at? Things like that. You cannot do anything with the information. You cannot understand what you're presenting. The next thing, no access to enemy information in combat at all. Not their health, not their power, not even their GUID or creature ID is available to you in combat. So you know nothing about your target. Nothing at all. Not even the mob's name. It's problematic if you're trying to do anything or articulate anything just displaying information. I'm not even talking about computational stuff. You can't really display information the same way the default UI can, and that's problematic. Again, you can kind of use secrets, but they're so limited in scope that it's still too gimped to really do much with it. And then the last thing is that the same restrictions that apply to player information, like yourself, applies to all players in the raid as well. Now I want to talk about possible changes that Blizzard can consider. Allow access to personal player cooldown and buffs with restrictions on knowledge about player debuffs. Now I'm going to explain that. There's two kinds of buffs and debuffs. Buffs are things that are positive to yourself. You know, you want to know, do you have raid buffs? Or is your trinket proc? Things like that. Knowing this information does not go outside the scope of Blizzard breaking computational combat add-ons, because all you're displaying is information that's already available to the base UI, especially now that their cooldown manager exists. This is the main thing that WeakAuras was expecting not to break. They thought they'd restrict access to other player buffs or debuffs, like raid boss mechanics, debuffs and things you don't want to see, because that's how you get into the problem with computational WeakAuras. But being able to see what's happening to your own self as a player is something that should just be allowed, and that restriction going as far as it does doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. The next thing, allow access to unit health and unit power for player at a minimum. Again, like say for unit frames, your player health bar. If you can't have access to that player health, you can't even change the color of the bar when you're low health or really do anything fancy with it. All you could do is pass the text through. And currently the way secrets work is you can't even format the text. So you can't change like millions to having an M and shorthand or truncate it or anything like that. What you get is what you get. You know, you get the secret, you set the secret in the text field, and that's it. And add-ons can't calculate, they can't do display information on it, they can't really do anything with it besides that. And it really gimps unit frames and WeakAuras in the same regard. And again, this is only the display of information. It's not like your player health is going to magically solve an encounter mechanic for you. So there's really no reason to restrict it. Same with player power. Like, you want to know your mana. That's just given. And yes, you can display the mana text down there, but like, doing nice bar animations that are clean and sleek in a UI, you can't do that without being able to calculate the value of said mana and get like percentage values and things like that. So again, they're basically making it so that add-ons can't compete with the base UI. And that's not what their intent is supposed to be. They're supposed to allow add-ons to still present and skin the UI with the same value and quality as the base UI, and that's simply not possible with the way they have restrictions set up. But the way the restrictions are set up don't make sense because they go above and beyond the intentions that they've given. And I've mentioned here, they should honestly just restrict unit power and unit health for all units in a raid, not just players. And again, this goes back to unit frames. How many of you use that unit frame add-on with the grid, and I have a picture of it, that displays everyone's health, and the health color changes when people are low or high? Well, that's not possible with these restrictions because, again, if you don't know the value of the health, you can't do any kind of sleek animations. So you have a frame, a unit frame add-on that can't compete with the stock UI, which is basically Blizzard going, use the stock UI, or else get this gimped form in this add-on that's severely limited. They're basically saying, we don't want unit frame add-ons or WeakAuras at all. Period. Not just for computational combat or encounters. They're going to the point where as WeakAuras refers to as Painter's Kit, I call it skinning. They're making skinning itself not viable with the way things are implemented. And that's easily fixed because, again, these APIs don't need to be as restrictive as they are. They can just be improved. So I'm proposing to Blizzard that we kind of reevaluate the goals and whether or not they're being too aggressive. Their number one goal, eliminate add-on ability to solve combat problems. This was already achieved by removing the combat log, add-on comms and chat and icons in combat, and using unit aura to scan for harmful debuffs. Their next goal, eliminate mandatory add-ons being a requirement to perform better in-game. You know, having add-ons being required to do anything at all, you know, having the de facto rule of raiding being you must have boss mod timers, you must have WeakAuras, or you're setting yourself back versus a player that does. And this, Blizzard has already achieved this goal by improving the base UI to include things that are essential. Now they got the cooldown manager, now they got built-in boss timers. Is it really necessary to also say WeakAuras can't do the same thing? Or a boss mod can't do the same thing? If the feature is already baseline, and the only thing the add-on's goal is to achieve parity, but not to exceed it, then what's the problem in allowing the add-on to do just that? If you have the cooldown manager, why not also allow WeakAuras to also still be a cooldown manager, provided that the feature set it's providing is only equal to that of the cooldown manager? Because you can still restrict it. You can still say WeakAuras can't access harmful debuffs, WeakAuras can't access this, WeakAuras can't access that. But you can say WeakAuras can access enough to match the feature and functionality of the base UI. The goal of this has always been computational WeakAuras and add-ons like DBM, my own add-on, doing too much in encounters. And I've said for many years, I'm going to go out there and say, I've asked for DBM to be nerfed for years. I've told Blizzard many times, this, and this, nerf them. I have previous videos on this channel. I'm not out here trying to say, don't nerf my add-on. I'm here saying, hit it with a bat. Just don't hit it with the atomic bomb. It's unnecessary. And the same with other add-ons that aren't my own. I'm not here trying to say, don't nerf add-ons. I'm saying, evaluate the goals of doing so and make sure we're not overshooting. Make sure that there's a clear intent and we're only meeting that intent without hitting everything all around it too. You know, if you have a bug in a field and you want to get rid of that bug, you don't go in the field with a flamethrower and burn all the crops to get rid of that bug if it's just one bug. You just grab that bug and squash it with your hand. You know, the surgical approach, not the bulldozer approach, as I always say. It's really important that we get this right, and I'm going to continue making videos on this channel as new information comes to light, or as Blizzard continues to communicate changes, because this is going to be a very back and forth alpha, and probably the beta thereafter is also going to be very back and forth. That's all I have to really say about this topic for now. But as I said, continue to subscribe to this channel, continue to follow on Twitch, and I will continue to do updates, possibly even daily sometimes if things keep moving this fast, about what's going on in Midnight and with add-ons. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.